quite honestly, that's not any different than when I was in school.
No, I know it isn't, but
It was always about, I mean, who had the 120 ad marked pens that could create the coolest looking, drawing for the final rendering. I mean, it wasn't a render.
I think it's more of a mindset, though, of knowing what it takes to get something built versus just make it look good on paper.
Right.
Okay.
Those are two completely different processes. And so if I know that I want that thing to get built, I'm going to draw it right, and I take pride in that. Welcome to the Archispeak podcast. I'm Evan Troxel. Each episode, Neil Pan, Cormac Phelan, and I have a casual conversation about all things architecture, and we invite you to listen in as we talk about everything in the profession, both the good and the bad. Maybe you're considering a career in architecture, you're still in school, or you've been around the blocks of Corbusier's City of Tomorrow more times than you'd like to admit. Join us in the studio as we stand around the water cooler and talk about why we love our chosen profession. It's time for some Archispeak.
Welcome to episode 75 of the Archispeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
And Evan, I think we have a couple of friends of the show to announce.
We have two friends of the show, which is very cool. The first one is Ramsey Chayan, and I am probably butchering Ramsey's name, coming to us all the way from Amman, Jordan, in the Middle East, and they've been listening to the podcast for over a year. And he says that they absolutely love the conversation in the background while working on studio assignments. So thank you, Ramsey. That is very cool to hear from you. And thanks for becoming a friend of the show. And our second friend of the show this episode is Orla Hook. And Orla is, I believe, a second-time friend of the show. I'm not sure where Orla is, but thank you very much for donating to the show. If you would like to become a friend of the show and get your name read on the Archispeak podcast, please head on over to archispeakpodcast.com/donate, where all of your donations help make the show possible, and we would really appreciate it. So that's it for Friends of the Show this week.
So, Evan, we should also mention, since we mentioned it at the end of the last episode, let's mention it at the top of this episode, about the T-shirts. So what's the deal on those?
Yeah, so what we're doing is trying to find out if, and we got a couple, I don't know, 3 or 4 people from the last episode saying they'd be interested in getting a Archispeak T-shirt, and we were thinking about doing another run of those. And so if we get enough interest, we definitely would look at doing that again. So if you would be interested in getting a Archispeak T-shirt with the Archispeak graphic on it, and that's it, that's all that's on it, it's just the graphic, and it just says Archispeak, no other junk on there. Let us know. Let us know on Twitter. Hit us up in the comments on the episode here or on our Facebook page. You can, anywhere, it doesn't matter. Just let us know if you would be interested in that. We've had a few people say, I would like a particular style or whatever. We're open to listening to that too. So let us know, and if we get enough people interested, we'll do another run of those.
And what color do those shirts come in?
The darkest color.
The
Dark
only
yellow?
Color.
That's right.
Anyway, so for this episode, we've got a few different smaller topics, but they all kind of revolve around one main sort of topic, and that's around the office.
It's a theme.
There is a theme. Yeah, there's a theme to this show. So I'm not sure which one you guys want to get started with first, but I don't know. Let's start with the iPad. The iPad at work. By the time this show airs, the new iPad Pro will have gone on sale. And
all the Microsoft Surface owners are rolling their eyes right now.
Yes, probably. But I mean, that we can talk about that. I'm kind of curious what you guys think, because I know, Cormac, you used to use an iPad in your former office. I don't know about your new office, but I mean, let's talk a little bit that will the larger one, or is the Surface on the right path here with that sort of that thing, or the iPad Pro, being a larger device, having the better sketching capabilities with the Apple Pencil. I don't know. Is this going to make an impact in the practice of architecture? What do you guys think about that?
Honestly, and here's where you two are safely on the West Coast, and I'm safely on the East Coast when I say this, but what will the iPad Pro be able to do that the Surface Pro can't do? Because in a lot of different project management type programs, they run the full version on the Surface Pro, where there was no real worthy app for those similar, like Newforma. I've talked about, the project management software Newforma a bit, and you had certain apps on the iPad that ran, and they ran fine. I mean, there was nothing really wrong with them. But the Surface or the Surface Pro, it could run the full version, and you didn't have to worry about the apps or anything like that. And so there's some things that Office-based, Windows-based programs just run better on the Surface Pro because it's being used as a more or less a mobile laptop. So let me ask, what would the Surface Pro do what would the iPad Pro do that the Surface Pro doesn't do?
I would just say that I think that it's not trying to be the all-in-one computer, which I think the Surface is, right? I mean, that's
true.
So to me, I'm more excited, and obviously this is my bias in this because I do make incredibly complicated things on computers. I feel, and I haven't tried a Surface Pro, and I'm sure I would like using one, but I also feel like it would limit me in certain ways with screen real estate and interface of applications. And I think that's really where the new technology of iOS, where they are trying to be completely different from OS X and not try to be the same thing. I think this is where software developers are really shining, and this is where new developers who have new apps that do very specific things are rethinking the way we do things. And I honestly feel like with the iPad Pro, we are probably on one of those precipices of completely new development because the screen is so much larger and you can do the side-by-side apps now and just some of this new stuff with the Apple Pencil, that I think we're going to see some new stuff that nobody has seen before. Whereas I don't think that is happening when you're basically making an ultra-thin laptop with stylus input. I mean, that's been done before, and that it is very portable, and you can run full apps, but I can't imagine actually, this is me doing the projects I do, running Revit on a machine like that.
Well, no, and I don't think, and I'm hoping that nobody thinks that that's a replacement for, a Revit-worthy machine.
Yeah, I guess if you're talking more like the Newforma line of stuff, then I think that does make a lot of sense.
But, if you're side-by-side comparing that, you want to show some like 3D graphics and things like that. Both of them have, touch input. So you could basically pull up a SketchUp model or something like that and, spin them through, a client or whoever, spin them through like, the layouts or the whatever you want to do. But when it comes to things like, you're talking about the new Apple Pen or whatever it's called. What is it called?
Jeez.
Apple Pencil.
Apple Pencil, whatever. It's not a goddamn...
You can't flip it over and use the eraser, I don't think.
It ain't no pencil. My pencil is my pencil. My Black Warrior pencils. Best pencils ever. Anyway. So you can sponsor us, Black Warrior pencils. No, but so... one of the good sketching programs that I use on the iPad that I think will have, I've never used it on the Surface Pro because I've never touched a Surface Pro, but I can see that the Autodesk. Why am I blanking on the
Sketchbook?
Sketchbook, thank you, would probably run really well on the Surface Pro as well. And then you'd be getting a full version, which, as much as I like the Sketchbook app on the iPad, I think that, a fuller version.
Yeah, but the difference is going to be with the pencil is all of the tilt and the pressure and all that stuff.
Well, there's different stylus out there that you can use. There's, Hex comes out, has come out with a assortment of different stylus that are really, really good. And
for Surface or for iPad?
Well,
what are you talking about?
You can use them for both.
Yeah, I'm imagining with the pencil, and only from things I've listened to and read about, is that it's completely different than using just kind of what's it called, where it's just kind of conducting through.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's Bluetooth now. So that's why it does palm rejection so good. And I'm
good,
reading
because I'm
artists at Pixar who are using this thing, and they're amazed by the palm rejection. I mean, and what's funny is you watch the new video, and nobody's touching the iPad with their palm, but I think that has more to do with...
Well, they're not left-handed.
Well, it also has to do with... they're just trying to show how responsive the screen is, and it's just better for video if you can see more of the screen, right, and your hand isn't resting on it. But from everything I've read, the palm rejection is pretty awesome, and that is 100% because of the Bluetooth technology.
I love sketching. I love sketching on an iPad. The only problem is that
I don't.
With the interface that I have, unfortunately, the way that I draw, I rest my hand on my paper.
Yeah.
And so, I'm getting that contact with
totally
the iPad in a regular stylus.
I don't love sketching on it. I keep going back to paper, but I'm kind of hoping this will change that.
I mean, you know what? I mean, yes. Me of all people, I will be the first to say that I enjoy, sketching on paper more than anything else. But I don't actually mind sketching on an iPad. I've drawn some pretty cool things with it, and especially with all the different apps, and I'm going to name them all, but I mean, all the different apps, there's ones that you can do different layers, and so I could sketch with kind of like a pre-line layer, kind of like if I was doing a comic book and I was drawing with, blue line first and then layering it over with pencil and then layering it over with ink. You can do those in a lot of these different apps, and I really like that almost a Photoshop type input of layering. So I like those, and those are things that you can't do on, because the first time that you make a mistake when you're drawing by hand and you try to erase it, not so much.
Yeah. Have you guys seen the new promo for the version of Procreate that's going to be coming out? Yes. It's got perspective grids, and it's got a bunch of cool stuff for the.
See, I'm actually excited about the iPad Pro, and I definitely would give that a look and a purchase way before I would a Surface. I'm just thinking, as we're talking about using a tablet in the office environment, right now, a lot of everything that we use, and I know it's a little bit different for you, Evan, but and you, Neil, but it's almost everything that we use is PC based. Almost everything created for the architecture world is PC based.
Yeah, but I think that the stuff that you're using it for, and I don't think it matters what brand it is. I don't think that you're not looking for file interchange for three-dimensional data necessarily. Like it's just it's imagery, it's documents, it's stuff that everything speaks. It's not.
But what Neil started it off with, as me using it for project management type stuff out in the field, I would feel like the Newforma, using the native app of Newforma rather than the iPad-based apps would be better for me out in the field using the full version rather than the apps. Mm-hmm. And I'm just...
What I find interesting about this is that for a number of years, probably in a decade before the iPad came out, there were they weren't really. I mean, there were tablets, right? I mean, Microsoft had tablet type devices, and they didn't sell. There was very
Well, they
little
were the
market.
tablet laptops.
Well, yeah. All right. So
Yeah, the convertible laptops.
but I mean that they kept trying, and to their credit, they kept trying, and it just nothing worked until the iPad dropped, and then suddenly everybody had to have or started using a tablet, and so I don't know, which one is better or worse, and quite frankly, that's not really what I was hoping to even discuss on this topic.
I know.
But I just think that, I mean, I'm just kind of curious what the tablet, I mean, certainly Apple did something with the iPad that clearly sparked an interest and a market. I mean, there was certainly a market already with apps and the iPhone, and that just spilled right over into the iPad and created a giant market out there that it still exists and is actually now slowing down. I mean, that I think the iPad Pro is a response to the fact that sales of the iPad and tablets in general has been slow.
Well, it's because people wanted
so.
People like the flexibility of an iPad or a tablet in general. Well, they like the flexibility of it. They just needed more power to do more things.
I think it's slowing down because you don't replace it every year.
Right. And it may have taken 5 years since the original one. It may have taken Apple and the industry in general this long to establish just the technology to get a tablet to be capable of doing what a laptop can do.
Yeah, the new one's pretty freaking powerful.
Right. Yeah. So, maybe that's why it's taken this long. But what I'm curious from our listeners too is how is the iPad or a tablet in general, maybe, if it's a Surface, how is that being used in your offices? Or is it being used at all? I mean,
I can tell you how it's being used in ours if you want for a little case study, because we actually have like a briefcase full of these things, which is that go out to interviews and they get used for various things like that. Because you see a lot of personal ones around the office, but as far as like what we actually use them for work, we use iPano a lot, which is a panoramic app where you can load in 360-degree images, and it's cool to put those in your client's hands and let them spin around to space.
Yeah.
And so you sit them down in a chair and they spin around and they are in that space. They're looking through the magic window at their space. And it's a powerful connection for them. They're driving. They hold the iPad up and they look down and they look around, and everywhere they look, it basically puts you in the middle of a room. And that's probably one of the best, easiest, it's like one of the most dummy-proof things we can do when we send people out with iPads, because there's zero like problems that are going to happen because of it. In like contrast to augmented reality, where lots of things could go wrong, especially with the wrong person at the controls. You send that out with somebody who's not technology savvy, and it's real easy to mess up and not come across the way you want to come across in an interview situation or under a high pressure situation. Something like that is still amazing. And we are using it for that too, but something like iPano is a great little thing that we use it for all the time in our office.
Well, but you said earlier, that we're on the precipice of more coming, and this, you were talking about augmented reality, and I remember meeting the one guy at the AIA convention who was showing what today's augmented reality technology can do with just a regular iPad. And now that we're becoming, now we're getting more powerful iPads, that I can just see that we'll be able to advance the technology a little bit more. And so you won't have to have the, oh my God, I don't know how to use this kind of stuff. It'll be a lot easier to, maybe dummy proof it.
Well, and I think that probably the most compelling thing about these is the stuff that they're putting in these that is different from a laptop. So we obviously have the big touch screen thing, but some laptops have that. But I think more than that, it's the gyroscope, it's the accelerometer, it's the built-in camera on both sides. And now it's the force touch, the 3D touch, pressure sensitivity. There's a lot of things that I think, and that's why I'm excited about the future, is how are apps that are totally mobile in this handheld device with all these additional kind of sensors and things that are basically linked to our analog environment, how are they going to help architects transform how we communicate with clients and people?
I'll tell you what. Here's what you do. You take the next version of the iPad Pro beyond the one that's here. You set it on the ground. It does a 3D hologram. And you can
Obi-Wan, you are our only hope.
You can spin it around. And you can go all Minority Report on it again.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep, I'm bringing that up again.
Bringing it up again. Jeez.
Hey,
Listen to the last episode.
Here's one thing I find kind of interesting about the iPad in general, but I think it's had an effect overall, is how firms deal with software and the fees, right? And the cost of software in general. I think one of the interesting things about the iPad that has really kind of, I think we're on that precipice, we're getting there, but I think there's a bunch of programs that are out there, and the cost for these things is very small in general, right? I mean, so we may get to a point where the software that we're paying for is going to come down in price, right? Kind of the equivalent I see, or the best example I can think of off the top of my head is that, like, for a console game, you were oftentimes paying $50 or more for that, game that you're going to play on your console device or game system, Xbox, PS4 or something. But you can get a thoroughly enjoyable game. It may not quite have the same graphics, but it's still an enjoyable, fun game. And at least for my son, who's 10.
It's maybe one generation behind. I mean, it's not that far behind, right?
But it's like $3 or $10. It's not $50. Now,
is that sustainable for the developers?
Well, I don't know if that's sustainable at all. But what I find interesting about that is that the cost of software in general is coming down. And I had asked a question actually earlier this year on my Apple for Architects site on Google+. And my question basically was, what should CAD software for architects cost? And I found it very interesting. I put $100, $500, $1,000, $2,000 and up, right? And it was interesting. Out of the, let's see, how many people total participated in this? Almost 100 people participated in the questionnaire. It's completely unscientific, but I was really surprised. It was like 50% said $2,000 and up for your CAD software, and I found that very surprising.
Well, okay, think about this. The reason why it's expensive, or the reason why they may have thought that you can spend more on it. This is stuff that we essentially bill for this program. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, you probably should be, because it's part of your ability to provide the deliverables that they want and need. So, if you're not building in the price of your overhead, the software, and reimbursables and things like that into your contracts, you're probably shortchanging yourself. And that's probably what they're thinking is that, look, I'm billing them X dollars for deliverables. Part of all my deliverables can't be accomplished without the software, so I'm building in the cost of the software as part of my deliverable cost, or at least a percentage per project. So really, at the end of the day, you should be paying for it, not technically out of your pocket, but out of your, client's pocket, right?
Well, yeah, it's the cost of doing business, yeah.
So
it's built in. Yeah.
But, so I don't disagree that, and every time I see the price of a out of the box, software. Like, Revit used to be what, $7,000 or some crazy business like that. I don't know. It was huge. And you're like, oh, I can't afford $7,000. Well, if you prorate that over the course of a year and over the course of your projects, it doesn't really add up to maybe more than like $100 a project or whatever. And so, that works. And I know, your audience was more geared towards like the small business and the sole practitioner.
Right.
And that's huge. And that's a lot of money to come out of it. And it takes a lot longer to recoup that. You're probably going to not update your software over the course of 1 year. Like, I'm using Revit 2014. Now I'm using 15. I'm looking forward to 16, those kind of things. And so, on larger commercial projects, you can kind of absorb that cost, whereas you can't. And so you're probably going to be using Revit 2010 versus, me using 16, only because you haven't recouped the cost yet, or, it's just too expensive.
Or it does what you need.
Or it does what you need. But I think where software companies, and including, and it may have been from the gaming community where they got this, and, kind of harken back to what we were talking in the last episode about, learning from industries that are leading the way rather than following. But is cloud-based subscriptions. I mean, the cost of and a perfect example is Adobe's Creative Cloud versus the standalone is an enormous cost savings on the Creative Cloud versus your standalone software. And you have essentially where you could use your license at work and you can use your license at home. You can only use it once at a time, but still you're able to be productive, whenever the, kind of like spark hits you. And I think, now, you've got at Revit, you've got the Render Cloud and things like that. So I think you're getting to a point where we're going to start seeing all of this software become a lot more affordable because it's going to be cloud-based.
Well, and next year with Autodesk, there's no such thing as perpetual licenses anymore.
Exactly. Right. So,
and that sounds really scary, but yet, I mean, if I'm going to give you an example, and I'll reference AutoCAD LT as this example, but for a year subscription, you pay up front, I believe. You're not paying monthly, but it's $360 plus or minus a year for AutoCAD LT. And prior to that, if you were to buy AutoCAD LT, it was about $1,000. So, roughly, and if you only upgraded every 3 years, then you're spending, your $1,000 for one license, and then 3 years later, you're three versions behind, and then you upgrade again. And then there's massive changes, right, between the, year one and year three, potentially, right? And at $350 or $360, you're spending almost the same amount of money, but yet you're able to stay up to date every year. And, I think what's also interesting, I just received a question on Twitter from a follower about needing the ability to essentially open up DWG files, turn on and off some layers, make some PDFs so that they can do some bidding on a project. And they were asking me, essentially what type of programs could they use to do this where they wouldn't have to necessarily buy a full-blown license for something like AutoCAD. And actually, the subscription allows for even a month. You can literally go and license AutoCAD for a month.
Looking at them right now.
Yeah, and so I suggested. The funny thing is, at first I was thinking, oh, okay, what free options are there? Oh, there's this, there's that, and then I was like, duh, just go purchase a license for a month, use it for what you need, get what you need done, and then you're done, right? I mean, a very small cost. It's not $360. I don't know what it costs for 1 month.
1 month for AutoCAD professional plan is $210.
No. Well, in this
So
case,
there's the preferred plan and then preferred
right.
plus plan.
Okay. So, but I mean, even for AutoCAD LT, I'm sure it's much cheaper because.
Oh yeah. This is full blown AutoCAD.
So, but I mean, I think these options are really useful for offices, small offices, and practices. That it gives us a whole lot more flexibility than when a few years back it was like, okay, well, I'm going to set up my office. So, wow, okay, I got to spend $7,000 on Revit, and like you said, Cormac, recouping that takes a while. But if I can, join in, I have not looked up the costs of, say, Revit or Revit LT for a year, but it might be something similar to AutoCAD LT. Well, for $350, it's like, wow, I can make that back pretty quickly. So, and so, and even if it's less than, a little bit more than that, it's not that costly when you look at the grand scheme, even for a small firm. And so I think it's really affordable.
LT subscription is $45 a month or $360 a year. And if you think about that, I mean, and that's amazing in comparison. So $360, back when I bought LT, I can't even remember what version, but I bought it for $1,700. And that was, I believe with the annual upgrade, updates that were like an additional couple $100 per license. And, so essentially I was paying about the annual price of the LT subscription for the yearly upgrade plus the initial $1,700 investment. And as, a sole practice or a practice of two, for two licenses, and you're paying almost $4,000 with that plus the upgrade versions. That's a lot, and that'll take a while to recoup that. Especially if you're doing houses, and we were lucky to land a couple of commercial projects, but that's a lot of money to come out of your pocket, and that's why I think I like the fact that all of these companies are seeing the benefits of subscriptions and cloud-based computing and stuff like that. That makes it a lot more affordable and a lot cheaper. Plus, they're also seeing that other companies are out there that are doing it and that are competing with them, and especially when they've got a whole profession of sole practitioners or really small firms that can go and get their computing, their software a lot cheaper somewhere else. They're going to start paying attention and competing, with those people.
I think that your survey is interesting, Neil, because it's not my perception that people are willing to pay money for stuff in the architecture field. I see a bunch of cheapskates.
Well, that's why I was so surprised that more than 50% of the people were like, I'm willing to spend more than $2,000, because I'm like, who are these people? Because everybody I talk to says, essentially, I'm not going to, I'm going to find it on BitTorrent, or I'm
going to use the free version of SketchUp, or
I'm just going to spend all this time and effort to crack a program.
Right.
When it's like, okay, for $350,
or just try to do all the crazy ass workarounds so that you can use the free version of something.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I'm going to print it.
I'm going to send my file to my friend where he can export it to a PDF because my version won't do that. That happens all the time, and I also find it crazy that people don't spend any money for training on this stuff, because it is not easy to learn, and there are people who can get you up and running so much faster, but I don't know. I think it comes from our days in studio and just putting in the hours and the pain.
I'm curious, how important, I'm not going to say training's not important, but as somebody who is entering an office, you're coming with some experience with some programs already, right? I mean, you're using SketchUp, you're using, AutoCAD or Revit or, any number of other programs in school already. So when you go to an office, you have some experience. I guess the level of training today is far less, I think, for offices than it used to be, because it used to be, this was going back a few years, is that if you wanted to hire somebody to do CAD work, it was like, okay, well, I've got to bring in somebody that doesn't even know, they may not even know how to use a computer. So, I mean, that's pretty much not a problem nowadays. But
Now people don't know how to use CAD, Neil.
is that it? Yeah. Okay. So everybody,
And we still have projects in CAD.
Actually, that is a really interesting point, because there's a lot of recent graduates who have never opened AutoCAD and don't know squat about it. They know
right?
Revit.
It's either Revit or Illustrator.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, Neil, look at yourself. I mean, how much do you know Adobe Illustrator or SketchUp or Photoshop or InDesign? And if you were going to go work somewhere and they asked you to do something in that, what would you do?
I know a little bit about most of those programs you mentioned. More about InDesign.
But if you had to put together like some boards in Illustrator, what would you do?
I could not use Illustrator.
So what would you do?
Boy, I don't know.
InDesign?
Yeah, use another program. I'm just saying, like you were asking about the need for training, and it's out there. I mean,
dust off my PageMaker.
Would you do it? Would you take it upon yourself to go maybe pay for a little training, or would you try to piece it together with a bunch of free YouTube videos, or what do you think? I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it, but I think most people will spend the hours searching for 80 2-minute long YouTube videos and kind of trying to piece it together rather than just paying for a course on Lynda or something.
Right.
So that's what I mean by the cheapskate mentality. I think most people will, if they can't, they'll try to figure it out, and they'll maybe try to piece it together. But I find it interesting that people don't, in what I consider, invest in yourself.
Okay, but what about somebody coming into an office and if they have some familiarity with the program that you're using, it just from school, then I mean, really the training involved. Here's where I've always seen it is that there's any CAD program, right, or BIM program. There's two languages involved here. There's the first language is, do I know the commands of the program, right? And can I draw in it? And then there's the second language, which is, how does this office use the program?
Office standards.
What is their office standards? How do they put together a set of drawings, right?
I guarantee you, no one in school has ever thought of the concept of office standards, let alone...
But they should.
And the other thing that blows me away, and this is just coming from my experience, is students eyeball this shit. They don't even draw it with dimensions.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's crazy that somebody spits out, yeah, here's a plan, and you go in and you start dimensioning it, and it's like, what are you snapping? Oh, what's a snap? I don't snap to anything. Like,
oh my God. Well, but Evan, wouldn't you say though that what you're doing in school and generating a design for a few, a quarter-long course, right? Or you may be doing multiple designs during that quarter. Wouldn't you say that that's a different sort of criteria or set of standards that you need to deal with than it is to when you're in an office?
I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't matter what they know. What they know is wrong.
Okay.
For the way that we need to do it.
Right.
And I know I wasn't like that in school. Like when I drew stuff in school, I drew it right. And I think most of the time now it's just design. It's just drawn to make the rendering look right.
Interesting.
Because there's so much emphasis on the final product, and there's definitely emphasis on the process, but even the process is messy, right?
Oh, but Evan, that, quite honestly, that's not any different than when I was in school.
No, I know it isn't, but
it was always about, I mean, who had the 120 ad-marked pens that could create the coolest looking, drawing for the final rendering. I mean, it wasn't a render.
I think it's more of a mindset, though, of knowing what it takes to get something built versus just make it look good on paper.
Right.
Those are two completely different processes. And so if I know that I want that thing to get built, I'm going to draw it right, and I take pride in that.
But, and we talked about this on the last show, when most people are looking for, or your clients and stuff are looking for that eye candy up front, but they want the photoreal eye candy, you're building it in say SketchUp or whatever else that you're doing. You said it best that, these are the programs that, create bad habits.
Yeah, they encourage bad habits.
Yeah, and that there's no consequences on, all of this wasted work. You just basically start over and try to recreate all of the stuff that you did. And so, yeah,
Can I be honest with you? One of my problems I've had with trying to use SketchUp was that it was so hard to try and do anything accurately.
Oh no,
it's
not at all.
Paralyzed me that it's like, how do I draw this? Oh, well, you just kind of do. I mean, I've had a lot of problems with SketchUp because I can't. It's like I want to snap to something. I want to draw something exactly 22 feet wide, and it's like,
and you can't.
Well, you can now.
Well, you always could.
Yeah, you always could.
It's just knowing how.
It's just it's a lot easier to just say, let me draw a box, and then let me start, carving out of that box, and right. So as Evan said, it's easy to start those bad habits, and then your model may look right. It's certainly usually not right, but I mean we've got a model that we've got going on in SketchUp because it's a lot easier to, do some things that we need to do with it. But we exported the model out of Revit and built off of it from there. So we know that it's an accurate model, and we're just, doing different, facade treatments and stuff to it. But we know it's right. It doesn't mean that we can really use it. I mean, we're sort of using it for. You're going to have to
rebuild it.
We're going to have to rebuild it, but. That's what the encouraging. What was the Revit based thing called again? That kind of SketchUp-esque type modeling that you'll be able to do that works with Revit.
Talking about Formit?
Formit, yeah. Yes, Formit. That it'll be interesting to see how that actually works, and because if it's something that. And I know that there are other programs out there that do that now already, but since we're talking about Autodesk products in Revit, it'll be good to see if you can do something that you can put dimensions to, but it is kind of intuitive like SketchUp, and then later on it's not a wasted effort to be able to translate it into. Right. Using it, taking it that step further into construction documents. So it's encouraging to see some of these things coming out.
Well, you don't have to wait. You could try it now. I know that Formit's whole system is based on Revit massing. So, the idea there is that you don't have to waste any of it and do it over again. And it works in the browser too. It's pretty crazy.
I've got a question for you guys. How many monitors do you use in the office for your workstation?
Minimum 2.
2? All right.
I've been thinking about going to 2 again, but I'm a 127-inch monitor.
Yeah, I can't not have at least 2 because I've got too many things open.
I've been okay with it. It depends on if I'm on the Mac environment, I'm okay with 1 because of Expose or Mission Control, whatever you want to call it. But on Windows, I wish I had 2, which I could do, I guess. I just haven't done it.
So you've got the email, and you've got all those things coming up, and then you've got, all of...
Yeah, if you like being interrupted.
But I've got, so many different reference tools and all these other things that, I have going on that I need to see, whether or not it's, going to the browser and looking up the building code or and having all these different windows open or, and it's easier for me just to kind of click through and just have everything up.
See, this is where the iPad has actually taken me back to the one monitor. And it's because of that device, I think, where you have one app open at a time and the focus that helps you have has gotten me back to that mentality. And I know what you're saying. And there are times when I want to see 2 or 3 things on the screen at the same time. And so that's why I think I'm heading back that way. But for many years now, because I do have a nice 27-inch IMAX screen that is nice resolution, and it's been great. It's been good, and I honestly feel like it has helped me focus on what I am doing, and that's where the one monitor thing. And I know there's a lot of people out there who have 2 and 3 monitors, but I think if you have one big monitor, I would even go bigger if I could. It shows there's actually been studies that have shown how much more productive you can be with a bigger monitor. I also think that 2 is better, but if it's on the one screen, it really helps me focus. That's kind of been my argument. And now, like I said, I'm thinking I might go back to 2.
Well, I ran a similar poll to the price of CAD software. I ran a similar one to that, and I found it interesting. About 70 people voted on that, and there'll be a link in the show notes if you want to chime in on it as well. But 55% said 2 monitors.
And I think resolution starts to come into that question. To me, naturally, the next question is how big? How
right? Yeah, and I didn't get into that
because I know a lot of people who work with 2 crappy old 19-inch monitors at 1280 by 1024, and it's like, well, yeah, of course, right?
Right.
So
right.
I think that does play into it.
Staring at my desk right now, I've got 2 21-inch HD monitors, and I wish I had a third one.
Yeah,
because normally I have so many things open as reference. So a lot of the stuff that I have
That's
open.
The project manager talking now, listeners.
It is the project manager talking. So, but it's so many different things to reference.
Mr. Minority Report talking.
Exactly. And now you know why I want that particular interface, because I have to pull up if I'm reviewing submittals or something, or if I'm, answering an RFI or whatever, I need to pull up
totally.
The set of drawings. It's a lot easier just to pull it up digitally. You need cut sheets
and drawings and email correspondence and all this stuff on the screen at the same time.
Now I need 15 different screens. So that's why I need to put the little iPad Pro down on the ground, let it hologram projection up where I can have
your magic gloves,
2 different things up, and I can just swoop around.
All right.
And yes, I was using my hands there.
All right, so wave your hands around. I've got another studio or office topic I want to touch on, which is music. I know one of the first offices I worked in, actually second or third, but we would have in the one floor, we probably had a dozen or so people. We had a large planning table kind of in the center of the space, and there was an old probably somebody's old stereo, right? And it would be turned to a station from the Bay Area most of the day. And it was kind of on low in the background. Now, this was before we had iPads, or not iPads, iPads too, but iPods and such. So, there was always this kind of music in the background, but it was low. And then slowly, I think when portable players or people we had a portable DVD player, or not DVD, CD player, right? And so you could listen to music that way. Yeah, this is old school, guys. Cassettes, right? We could go that far back, but
wax cylinders. Come on,
I don't go back that far. But anyway, I'm just kind of curious what you guys think, or what. I mean, I haven't worked in a larger office in a number of years now, so I'm not really sure how that's changed, or how, if it's any different, or if there's any music at all, or do offices still play music in the background, or does everybody just kind of plug in their headphones and tune out?
Yeah, in my office, most people either don't have music at all, or they've got their headphones in. For me personally, I have speakers on my desk and I play music out loud. And I sit 4 feet away from somebody else in the current team area that I'm in right now. And so there's 4 to 6 people in there, and they get to listen to my music. And to me, I can't listen to podcasts. I can't listen to audiobooks. I can't listen to anything when I'm working like that. But if I do need music going in the background. And I feel like it just makes it feel like more of a studio environment. And so I'm not the song Nazi. I don't, if somebody doesn't like something, or if they do want to hear something, I'm totally cool with. And I that's one of the reasons I bring my iPad to work, because I put on Apple Music, and it's just the jukebox. But there's a lot of people who hate music in the studio, or they just go into their own little world. And I know I will even do that sometimes when I really have to crank on something. I will put the headphones on as to block out another layer of the world, so that, and hopefully it's just a cue to somebody, hey, don't bug me, I'm cranking on something. That's kind of like the little physical mark on the outside that says, hey, I'm cranking. It's got to be really important if you're going to bug me. But other than that, I like to have music going, because to me it feels more like an architecture studio.
So I've worked in offices that shun music, not even headphones. They think that you need to be, perfectly alert and aware of everything that's going on in the office, or, whatever. And, I don't know if I necessarily agree or not. I mean, if in my current office right now, there's so many different conference calls going on at a time, and people typically are sitting at their desks when they're doing these conference calls, because it's, Skype with clients from around the country and consultants from around the country or world or wherever. And I was pretty amazed at how actively, how many conference calls are going on at one time in our office. And I was pretty amazed at it. And so I could see where playing music out loud could be a distraction. And there are people who at their desk will play music rather than, on headphones. They'll be playing them either through the speakers on their phone or, some small speakers on their desk, but they'll play it really low where just they can hear it. And, and none of it is typically that distracting. I've worked in a firm where we used to basically have kind of like a roulette of different people playing DJ at a time. It's just like, or we would have one guy kind of play the DJ, and everybody would kind of send music to him and say, hey, put this in the playlist and stuff. And so it became this big, huge kind of eclectic version of everything. And of course, 9 times out of 10, they could usually tell which songs I contributed. That's really loud. Turn it down.
Yeah.
What is that? Why is he screaming at us? Those kind of things. But and I didn't even find that distracting, even when, I was on a phone call or something like that. And, and normally, we don't play it like excessively loud where it sounds like we're at a rave. It's more of, just something, some background noise.
Yeah.
And, it's just, I know, Neil, you've said that you don't like working with, music or distractions in the background. And, so it's just a preference of the person that's working. And, the unfortunate thing about the headphones is people do get, they're not listening to some of the conversations that are going on, because, there used to be the time, and I'm only living vicariously through what I see, imagery wise. I didn't live it like Neil did, where you had this big, huge open studio with drafting desks, and people were walking around, and you could like look at what's going on your desk. So there was no screen to kind of like hide in the screens. So there's a lot of times when a project manager is somewhat detached from what's going on the project, because it's on a 21, or in Evan's case, a 27-inch monitor, and you don't really see what's going on. So there's, the conversations that you have about, maybe you could draw it this way or that way or things like that. When you've got your headphones on, you're kind of tuned out of those kind of potential education experiences.
Yes. Yep. Totally agree.
And those are the things that kind of annoy me about the headphones. And, that may be an old man kind of talking here, but, I just think there's opportunities that are missed when you're kind of tuning out.
Yeah.
And so if I do put in my headphones, I only put in one earbud, and the other one's kind of, like I tuck it in my shirt, and I'm just, so I can hear if there's a phone on, if I can hear if somebody's talking about the project, and I'm like, oh, wait, we decided to do this.
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah. or hey, just by the way, it's an hour later and we've of course changed it already.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be the what's going on in our project is different hour, different floor plan.
Well, I'm intrigued with this new app that a friend of mine sent to me. It's called Rockbot, and what's kind of cool about it is it reminds me of the old jukeboxes where you get to go up and pick the song that you want to play next, except it's basically there's like a main manager app running somewhere, and then everybody else runs like this client app, and you just basically vote for the next. You can put a song in the queue, you can vote them up, vote them down.
That's cool.
And then that way, you can even have it kind of like randomly pick a next song, and it's pretty nice because then it becomes it's a community choice at that point, right? It's no longer the music dictatorship that I run at my desk. It's the whole team gets to pick, or the office, or whatever the setting is. Everybody kind of has a say. It seems like a neat maybe experiment, at least to try. I know there's a lot of places all over the country that are doing this app, whether they're restaurants or bars or whatever. But I wonder how successful something like this might be in an architecture studio, because tastes are varied, right? It's
of course,
yeah, it's all over the place. So maybe it would be successful, maybe not, but it might be fun trying it out.
Yeah, everybody knows to stay away from my easy listening playlist.
Is that in air quotes?
Yes, exactly.
I'm really curious what our listeners, how they feel about this. So let us know. Let us know on.
I have a feeling that music is a huge part of the architectural studio culture. So.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is. But I'm curious from the office side too,
I'd like to see
how studio. But I'm curious what what kind of standards different offices have set.
Right.
Let us know.
I agree, Neil, because, I'd like to see, especially with like this interesting shift in office culture, how people are dealing with things like that, and whether or not, you have like the Rockbot or things like that, it'd be interesting to see how it's done.
Yeah. Or is it just Pandora or Spotify running or what?
Right.
Even if there was just an iTunes station running somewhere, I don't know if they still have this, but they had the whole party playlist thing for a while, where anybody who had iTunes on their iPhone could just throw a song into the queue, and that was pretty cool too. So I mean, I know there's a lot of this kind of instant DJ stuff out there. It'd be interesting to see who's using it.
Or are there anybody's offices that actually have professional DJs?
Wow. Okay. If you're one of those, you need to get in touch with us, and I think you may have some resumes coming your way. Another one, guys, I wanted to throw out there, and this is probably a pretty unusual one, but what sort of and I'll use the word hazing, but have you ever worked in an office that had any sort of like some sort of hazing ritual that the new employee would have to participate in or do?
Yep, you're the new guy. You got to buy the donuts.
Ah, okay. Got to buy the donuts. Now, how long does that last? Is that like the first week, or is it like every week for?
Well,
how many times are donuts showing up per week?
Actually, it's so the old office that I was at, the new guy would bring the donuts in the first Wednesday they worked. They brought in donuts, because then they would normally do like the Friday donuts where people just kind of rotated throughout the office and bought like that month Corporate signing up for February, and so I didn't sign up for February, but so it was always the new guy buys the donuts thing, and thankfully they didn't have that at my new place.
There's too many people.
There's way too many people for that, because you're just like, hey, you're going to buy donuts for the office. I'm like, there's 140 people. I haven't gotten a first paycheck yet.
How about you, Evan?
In our office, we don't have too much hazing. I think we're pretty nice. We're pretty nice at our office. So we take new people out to lunch.
Oh, okay.
I think the worst thing that a new person typically has to do is take a set or multiple sets to DSA.
Oh,
They're the ones who can spend 2 hours in the car and go down to LA and drop off 6-7 sets of volumes of plans, and that's usually what happens. So maybe that's a little bit of hazing, because that pretty much sucks. I mean, you've got to find parking, you've got to load up the dolly, you've got to get it to the building and up the elevator, and like these are enormous sets of plans. We actually got turned around with our high school submission because our plans weighed more than 35 pounds per volume. They actually made us split them up to get them. I think they made us get them down to 25 pounds per volume. And 30 by 42 sheets, they add up quickly. So that job turned into like 6 volumes all of a sudden. It went in as 2 or 3, and it came out as 6.
Just a complete side note here, but so I had a similar situation where, so most of the time we're submitting to county governments, and they've dealt with big projects before. I was working with the city of Annapolis, and there's smaller community and mostly residential projects. Here I bring in my volumes, multiple copies of volumes of the high school renovation, or the elementary school renovation we were doing. And they looked at me, they're like, we don't have the space for those. Yeah. I don't know what to do with them. And they were just so overwhelmed, because they're the ones who asked for the 10 copies. Well, I don't think they were, understood that the 10 copies was 3 volumes, and specs included,
ridiculous,
and everything else. It was horrible.
Come on, digital submission.
I was going to say that's where we need to go. I was going to say,
send them the model.
This is what we need. We need the digital, even if it's just a PDF, and they could pull them up in Bluebeam, and they can review them through that, and make comments on the drawings, and then send them back to you, and go that. I mean, we've got that route now where almost,
but they're behind us for sure.
Oh yeah,
Jeez.
yeah. So they need to keep pushing forward and get to the point where they're accepting digital submissions, even for residential. It would make their lives so much easier, because you get one 27-inch nice iMac or screen, or you can just pull them up and look at them almost at 1-to-1 scale.
Almost.
So the firm that I worked with a while back, we had probably about maybe 30 people, I think, when I started there. And so the hazing ritual that they had was every Friday you had to go out and or you had to go around the office and take everybody's beer order. Literally everybody would have a different beer that they wanted.
Could you imagine that now with all the craft beers? And
oh yeah,
it
so
would be pretty
then
precise.
You had to go, and I think actually I ended up doing okay on this one, because I sort of cheated a little bit, but they everybody was supposed to donate $1. Essentially, right? So everybody donates $1, and you take all that money and you go buy everybody's beer, and you bring it back and you pass it around, right? And so what I started doing was, I think if I got enough people to buy into a particular brand or something, then I'd go buy the 6-pack, and usually it was less than the $6 I had, depending on the beer, right? So
Pabst Blue Ribbon.
That's right.
No, nobody ordered that one, but. Well, what I did find interesting, but you had to do it every week until the next new hire. So that was brutal.
So you went out recruiting people. Come work for us.
Here, come work for us, please. Jeez. I mean, the firm was a lot smaller. Once the firm got bigger, that kind of died out. But what I did find interesting about it was, especially when you start with a firm of like around 30 people, it's really hard to get to know everybody's name, right? It takes a little while.
Geez.
And so the interesting part was by having to do this beer run, you had to walk around, okay, get your name. This is this person. They want this beer. And then you have to go back and give it to them. So I don't know. I found it a really interesting way to remember everybody's names in the office.
All right, Evan, let me ask you this question, seeing as how Neil opened it up. And that's actually pretty interesting because I'm now 3 months in and I've learned maybe all of the names that are in my particular studio, but not in the office. There's, people that, I may never actually see in a day in that office. So, and I know, Evan, you've got an office of 200 people. Do you know everybody's name?
No way. I know most of them though. I often think about this. I wonder if I know more names in this office than anybody else because I do know an awful lot. And it's not only our office, it's that we have like 8 offices.
Oh, yeah.
And I know many people from many offices. So, and that's because I've worked in here for 8 years, but then I've also worked here for 4 years previously. And a lot of the same people were still there. So it's surprising because I suck at names, but I know people's names in my office, which is really weird. So I know a lot, but there's no way I could know them all. And plus it changes too much.
I made it easier for everybody so that when, since we had our chili cook-off and I won. So now they all they all get to just call me the chili guy.
I don't know.
So
if that's
for at
good,
least
Cormac.
a year, I don't have a name. I'm just the chili guy.
Yeah, you are. That sounds like a great place to end this episode.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's going to be the name of the episode, too.
All right. Well, we talked about a number of things throughout this episode. So if you've got something to share, a similar hazing ritual or comments about the music and some of the other stuff we talked about, please let us know. Give us some feedback on Twitter and on Facebook page as well. So in the comments in the website too. So that's at archispeakpodcast.com, and our Twitter accounts are listed on there. And then we also have the Archispeak podcast Facebook page, which actually we've been getting a lot of people liking that lately. So that's kind of fun to see that happening. And we keep teasing this. I mean, we do have the Archispeak podcast phone number, which is 415-484-8496. So if you've got some real fun hazing story or something to say about the music or anything else we talked about on this show, leave us a message there. And we certainly enjoy reading the Google transcript of it. And if you'd like, we can share it on the show. So,
and if you want a Archispeak t-shirt, let us know.
That's right.
You might want to wear it in your office.
Yeah.
While you're listening to music.
All right, people.
There you go.
We need to know.
That's right. All right. See you guys next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.